The Bitcoin Group, the American original. For over the last 10 years, the sharpest Satoshis, the best Bitcoins, the hardest cryptocurrency talk. We'd like to welcome our panelists. Josh Shigala from the Standard.io.
Why, good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Ugly Old Goat from uglyoldgoat.com.
Hodl, 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 save, builder, sound money, sound money.
And I'm Thomas Hunt from the World Crypto Network. Moving on to issue one. Issue one. HBO has found Satoshi Nakamoto. According to HBO, Satoshi Nakamoto will be revealed on HBO on October 8th on Max. Who is Satoshi Nakamoto? According to Politico, this revelation could send shockwaves through cryptocurrency markets and beyond, by Isabella Kaminsky, who hates Bitcoin since the Financial Times. However, at Coindesk, they've already found out. According to Polymarket, the betting website, they say that the HBO documentary will name Len Sassaman, cryptographer, as Satoshi Nakamoto. They're also confident that this won't be the smoking gun. Josh Shigala, we've been here before. Last time, Dorian Satoshi Nakamoto had the same name as Satoshi Nakamoto, therefore he must be Satoshi. This time, Sassaman was in all the right places, knew all the right people, and had similar ideas to Satoshi Nakamoto. What do you think? And now you're muted.
Yeah, it's the thing is, there's a small pool of people that it could be, pretty much in the world, purely because of the cypherpunk mailing list and the skill set needed and the interest needed. And first of all, I don't really care who Satoshi is. None of us sort of OGs do. We think it's nice to have this folklore of this guy that runs off. The second, if he was found, I would be a little bit disappointed in his character anyway, due to the fact that he never sort of poked up his head and said like Craig Wright isn't Satoshi in a private key message or something. But by signing that message as with an early private key, just to sort of
Well, if it was
stop all these
Sassman,
people from getting
he would
scammed.
already be dead by then. So then it becomes this question of if there's multiple Satoshis. Unfortunately, Sassman committed suicide due to depression. I forget the exact date, but it was before the Craig Wright message. As it says here, he took his own life in 2011. So that was around, maybe some are alleging around the time that Gavin went to speak at the CIA. Perhaps a depressing time in Bitcoin, a gully in what is otherwise an incredible success story. Maybe it was a downtime. I mean, I don't think this is a dark, like I told, a friend of mine, I told about it, and she was like right away, oh, it's a dark suicide. And I'm like, no, I think this is depression happens and people need help. I think it's one of
Yeah,
those. He suffered lifelong depression. So go
and
ahead.
while
Sorry,
while
Josh.
at the time when Gavin did talk to the CIA, he wasn't it when we were in the forums talking, he was talking to a VC that had ties to the CIA, because they sort of co-invested or something, but then it turned out they were actually a lot of the money was coming from the CIA for that particular fund. And so it wasn't such a massive thing. It was big, like it was big because everything was big back then. Like if a bloody service station accepted one of the in desperation one of the Cassatius coins for some petrol, everyone would be like, oh, the petrol station's taking Bitcoin. Everyone would be up. So there was, everything had a little bit of hype, but it wasn't like a massive. So I don't know if that would be the reason for him to top himself if that was the case. But yeah, that's interesting. If he is dead because he did commit suicide, then maybe there is something there, because I just don't think Satoshi's around anymore. I just don't. It just doesn't feel like that. And I've never thought it was multiple people. Like it doesn't take multiple people. It was a bunch of stuff that was already invented, and it was like a poem. The words are already there. They just put the words in the right sequence, and it was, hey presto, we got Bitcoin.
There's also a lot of benefits for HBO if Satoshi Nakamoto or their candidate for Satoshi is dead. They can't be sued. There's no immediate response. The media can't just go put a microphone in his face like they did with Dorian. And Dorian said a couple of statements publicly. He said, I want a free lunch. And then he said, I had nothing to do with that project. He was very clear about it. Sassaman, whether he wants the credit or not, can't speak for himself. So there is no defense. But he knew all the right people. He was in all the right places. He worked on TCP/IP. His roommate was Bram Cohen, who invented BitTorrent. Ugly old goat. What do you think about HBO finding Satoshi and the betting markets saying that it's Sassaman?
Well, I'd say I've never told anybody about this before, but in 2009, I was actually working as a consultant for Craig Wright. So you guys can draw your own conclusions. HBO can have their fun. I hope they start taking Bitcoin, and I'll just leave it at that.
Craig, right. Oh, no.
Oh, dun, dun, dun.
All right, I'm not going to say anymore, but that's all I know about it. So it'll be interesting to see.
I was working as an insultant at that stage for the guy.
Okay. Well,
Well, and similar to this,
I
Craig
hope
writes, Satoshi
HBO
claim
starts
fell
taking
apart.
Bitcoin for their. I mean, if they need to start taking Bitcoin, they could probably get a pretty good hodl if they're smart enough to just save all the Bitcoin that they take in as revenue. Their stock should go way up in the next 10 years. So, I don't know if HBO executives are listening to this, but that would be a great company strategy.
Depends if it's a hit piece or not. I think HBO still has the power to move the price a little bit. Like, back in the day, it was quite easy to move the price if you had a big enough megaphone. You could say China bans it, or you could, or when Elon Musk tweeted, it would go up and down, or even what's his name, the gold guy, um, uh, uh,
Peter Schiff.
Peter Shifty, yeah. So whenever Peter Shifty tweeted, now when he tweets, nothing happens. So because the market's outgrown him, but uh, but back in the day, and maybe HBO still has enough sway if they hype it enough and they get Satoshi, and they get ready to short it, release Doco like it's some crazy guy that's got billions that can now sell it. That'll tank the market because if he's alive, the private keys are hot. They'll be able to make some money on that.
Well, it's a lot of fun to speculate, but I think for real Bitcoin coiners, it's really a non-issue. Except it's fun to talk about, and it does grab a lot of attention just because it's such a mystery, and it's a mystery that will never be solved. I think.
If Satoshi is dead, it would hopefully settle the issue of the Satoshi coins. Of course, there's always a chance he or she wrote them down or put them in a safe deposit box or buried them under a house or something. We have no idea how far this could go. It is interesting, like Josh said, can HBO move the needle? And I feel like they certainly got my attention and the attention of Bitcoin Twitter. And it's interesting for this to happen again. Remember, it was not too long ago HBO had the documentary series The Anarchists about the Anarchapulco convention in Acapulco, Mexico, where our own friend, a friend of the show, Juan Galt, was a major narrator and majorly featured in the documentary, which is a very interesting documentary, also featuring Bitcoin ATMs and other things very closely tied to this show. And then we see this documentary where not to brag, but let's go ahead and brag, pat ourselves on the back here. We're pretty much on first name basis with all four of the principals who are in this trailer. Adam Back, Peter Todd, Samson Mao, and of course, Roger Ver. So it's really neat to know all these Bitcoiners, to see them interviewed. And although I think this is going to be kind of a fluffy documentary with lots of drama and who is Satoshi, it's still a popular topic for Bitcoin, something we predicted would happen. People would talk about this forever. It's always going to fascinate the media. Let's say this is the first in a series of Satoshi documentaries. There's going to be other ones with other points of view. I'm interested to see this guy's point of view. Previously, he did a documentary on HBO Max about Q and QAnon. I haven't checked that out yet, but I'm interested in that as well. Do you guys have any more on this issue? Ready to move along?
Let's go.
Move
Let's
it up.
move.
All right, let's see. So we've also
home
got
run.
a shout out to Peter Rizzo, whose article called Satoshi Nakamoto's New Mystery 2009's Missing Blocks came out at just the wrong time. When everyone's talking about the other mystery Satoshi, he's got a great article about the blocks and the early mining that Satoshi did. And you guys should check it out. They've added to the Patoshi analysis and finding gaps in Satoshi's mining. So we're still covering that. Also, of the Satoshi candidates, exit question, is it Len Sassman? Do you think that it's Adam Back, Peter Todd, Samson Mao, Roger Ver, Nick Scabo? Who is Satoshi Nakamoto? Josh Shigala, you're on HBO, and they just asked you, what do you say?
It's ugly.
Ugly old goat.
Please,
Josh
please
Shigala.
don't say that. I don't, I'm not trying to take any credit for Bitcoin. I mean, anybody that knows me knows that it can't possibly be me.
He certainly is the right age. He was in the right place at the right time. But ugly old goat. Who is Satoshi Nakamoto? Is it any of the people I listed, or is it someone else?
Who's the guy that died of pancreatic cancer?
Yeah.
There was Hal Finney. I think he
Hal
had
Finney.
I
perhaps
think Hal Finney's
McKinney.
a good candidate. I think
Hal Finney's an excellent Satoshi candidate. Could be Hal, could be Wei Dai, could be that guy who was in jail. There's a lot of interesting Satoshi candidates out there. Scabo, Back, Finney, others. But I do think the search is going to continue. I don't think anybody knows. Let's move on to issue 2. Issue 2, IMF pushes El Salvador to narrow Bitcoin law for funding. That's right, the IMF is literally pushing on El Salvador, asking them to get rid of their Bitcoin law, or at least, quote, narrow the scope. I don't really know what that means in this context, in order to receive funding from the IMF. It's an interesting time to push this on El Salvador, as currently they are up in their Bitcoin investment. Previously, they were down. Might have been a better time then for the leverage. Ugly old goat, what do you think of the El Salvador experiment so far, and the fact that the IMF is publicly asking them to reduce their Bitcoin law?
Well, I've always had a mixed bag on the El Salvador. I mean, I think it's possible. They have a benevolent dictator basically in the country, and I'm not a dictator because he was elected, but I think that I have a lot of conflict with the idea that of having Bitcoin as legal tender. In fact, if they would abolish legal tender laws completely, I mean, that was basically, Ron Paul's view. We just need to abolish legal tender. Although in the United States, gold and silver are legal tender constitutional money, but we got completely away from it. The problem with legal tender is defined to whatever people, whatever the powers that be want to define it to be. But the idea that the government of El Salvador is hodling Bitcoin, and that is the strength. And so hopefully they refuse the IMF loans. That was the underpinning hint in that article that I saw. And that would be great. Say, you know what? We don't want you anymore. We don't need you anymore. And then the next thing we have to worry about is, will we have somebody like, a George Bush who decides to invade like we did in Panama. So, when a Central American country gets out of line with United States interests, we tend to make a military move. So the difference is, I think, Bukele is a man of integrity, and he's done a literal miracle down there, cleaning up the the country. I was locked up with a lot of the MS-16 guys, so it is. I mean, that's a heroic act. Now, how he can bring those gangsters back into society, that's going to be the next challenge for him. I think that's, I think that's on the table too. And I think it's just a great experiment. It's just great to see what they're doing. I hope they don't take the IMF money. And I think they just need to abolish illegal tender and let Bitcoin do its thing. The fact that they have a hoard of Bitcoin is that is the the future of I mean, it's going to be the Hong Kong of the Americas. It really is, and it's going to take a decade or so for it to emerge. But I can see that happening.
It could be incredible if it turns out. I agree with you. I've not been a big fan of the dictator or the way that he's operated. He has gotten results. He has used extreme measures. And then I also hope that, like you say, the country has a hoard of Bitcoin. I hope they keep it safe. It's obviously up to them
Yes.
to have a multi-sig, to have a protected system where, let's say, even the president or the dictator couldn't accidentally run off with it, because then we'll find out how many Bitcoin fit in a suitcase. But while I can be critical of El Salvador, I can also be critical of the IMF at the same time. I do think they have the right to set the conditions of their loan. It's okay for them to come in and say, hey, I want this and this. And like Ugly said, I think that El Salvador should say no. I think the IMF has come in at a bad time here. If you read, Confessions of an Economic Hitman, the classic book, he talks about how they run the country into the ground. Then they ask them to take the bad loans. You can't do it right now while El Salvador is on top of their Bitcoin investment. They're doing good. You have to wait till it's down. Then you approach them. So I don't know who planned this, but they look like fools. And I don't think it's going to work. I think El Salvador is going to be defiant. I think the dictator likes to be defiant. He always looks good in that suit. So I think he'll do that. Josh Shigala, what do you think? The IMF, they're literally muscling in. Like the things you guys say will happen is happening.
Yeah, I mean, the IMF has been criticized a lot over the vast amount of years. I mean, in the 90s, there was they were saying that it was cause for the Asian financial crisis, and this is again um, strong arming an independent state. However, they choose to govern themselves, and it's quite frankly atrocious. I hope they don't bend the knee. I hope, but you know, they don't have vast amounts of Bitcoin. It's not like they're early Bitcoiners. They've got 5,800 Bitcoin or something like that. So it's not huge. It's not like enough to run a country or to back the full amount of the country. So um, I mean, most countries run on a deficit. They have to because everything's more expensive. Like the stuff that they undertake, governments, which they shouldn't, because governments should just be small. So they should be tiny and protect the basically protect the citizenry. But even then, we don't even need that. I mean, on the libertarians front, I think we could even afford private security, but it would be a slow process, and you try to do that slowly without some sort of revolution because that just destroys everything. But um, building roads, all of this stuff is really expensive. It's a lot of money. I'm just trying to pave the private road up here, and it's so much money. It's so much money. It's insane. It doesn't have to be because it's bitumen is some rubber with, I mean, it's really easy to, it's just why is it so expensive? No one knows, but it is expensive. And, and so these things add up. And if you can make a smaller government, and now that they El Salvador has put all these people in prison, all these gangsters and such, maybe they don't need as big as a police force. They can lower that, but then you could set to anger um, a police union, and that you don't want that either. So it's a tricky situation, and to keep a largish government in comparison to how big your state is and how many how big your economy is. It's going to be it's a tricky juggling game, and so sometimes you have to play with the devil to be able to get credit to pay for some of these things. I hope it would be so cool if he could run pure and just give him the finger and just keep on stacking sats. That would be epic. So let's see how it goes. I'm definitely watching. My popcorn is out. The popcorn bag isn't as big as the US election popcorn bag that I've got going, but it's still there, and I'll be watching.
Well, that blends well into the exit question. As I said, if the price of Bitcoin is up, El Salvador will be fine. If it goes down, they might need those IMF loans. Now, ugly old goat predicting against the magical Bitcoin ball, the predictor and source of all truth in this universe. Will the price of Bitcoin be higher or lower this time next week? Oh, you're muted, which makes it more dramatic and suspenseful. Go ahead, ugly. Higher or lower?
It's going to be higher. We bottomed this thing out yesterday, October 3rd. We bottomed that when we had that little quick flag down quickly under 60 and reversed. We are on a very strong seasonal. I could probably share this. Can I screen share with you?
Yeah.
Let me see if I can find.
Go ahead, should work. If you push the screen share, it's on now.
All right, let's see if I can share this. Oops. All right. Everybody see that chart?
Yeah.
Looks good.
All right. So there's a real strong seasonal, and this is a classic sell-off that we had, and between August and September, and the fact that the market was in an uptrend. I measure a trend by the two-week highs and lows, and by that measure, we were already, even with the sell-off we've had this week, it was still in an uptrend. In fact, that first time that you break below the previous week's low is when you buy it. So this week, I think, was a week of accumulation by smart money, and I think we will probably very rapidly get up to 70,000. And then once we get into the all-time high territory, it's all the bets are off. Now anything can happen. And I think just I've been extremely bullish on gold, and I see I see $15,000 to $20,000 gold here within the next year and a half. I think I don't know what's going to happen. Like I said, we talk about this election, but if Trump is not elected, it's going to be because the same crap happened as happened in 2020, and we could have some type of revolution or civil war in the United States. I think it's that bad right now. So, and he's not a panacea. I mean, he's not going to be able to solve things. He'll be able to hold things together. It's so, that's where I'm coming from. I just I think that we're getting ready for the biggest inflationary trend that it's going to be. Change means opportunity. So it's going to be chaotic, but it'll be a lot of opportunity, and it'll be difficult, but it'll also be exciting. And depending upon your attitude and your outlook, it can be a lot of fun.
All right, Ugly can go ahead and turn the screen sharing off. Let's go to Josh Sagala. Do you think it'll be higher or lower next week?
I'm not going to go up against the old goat here. I'm going to say up as well.
I don't know how to turn it off. Oh, here we go.
All right, and now we're going to go to the Magic 8 Ball, the predictor and source of truth in the universe. Everyone's going up. Let's see. Here we go. Will the price of Bitcoin be higher this time next week? It says, ask again later. Ask again later. You can't command the truth. You have to wait for important knowledge like that. So we'll ask again.
Chat, what do you think?
Next week. Yeah, tell us in the chat. What do you think? And we'll check again with the ball next week. Check out worldcryptonetwork.com. We've got 4,024 videos, including lots of these fun, new AI-generated shorts that the kids love because they're really shorts, and they're shorts. At worldcryptonetwork.com. Moving on to issue 3, as we said, politics. Democrats mobilize crypto voters to counter Trump's Bitcoin appeal. As we've been saying for weeks, cryptocurrency doesn't need to be just for one side on the right or for the left. It should be for both. It should be for everybody. Everyone can benefit from Bitcoin, and this is starting to happen as a super PAC is launching Crypto Rides, a direct effort to mobilize Democratic-leading pro-crypto voters to counter the GOP's Bitcoin-only voter narrative. So there is room for Bitcoin and crypto on both sides. We've also seen a new article in Bitcoin Magazine, previously a very right-wing Bitcoin magazine. Aaron von Weirdum has been named editor again, and he's written his own little opinion piece here where he says that Trump does not give a damn about Bitcoin, which is a very interesting and I think strong argument that Trump's just kind of pandering for Bitcoin. But in many ways, you could say that he's gotten it into the press and the press is talking about it. So that's good anyway. Let's go to Josh Shigala. What do you think about politics in Bitcoin, both sides engaging, as well as Bitcoin Magazine actually having an opinion piece against Trump?
Well, okay. So I think there's a lot of things at play here. I think that what's happening is that the political elite in the US realize that Trump is most likely going to win this election, and so they're just setting up the worst possible scenario for him. They're setting up World War III. They're just going into Iran. They're doing all this nonsense, and they're going to leave him with a shit economy. They're going to leave him with World War III to deal with, and he's going to have a hard time. So that's one side of the equation here. Whether he's fully for Bitcoin or not, it doesn't matter. If he got in without them doing all that crap, I think he's the more free market candidate. Free market is good for Bitcoin. He will drill and bring oil prices down, so that's globally good because the US has got so much oil, it's unbelievable, and natural gas. So energy prices coming down would basically bring inflation globally down. So that's a good thing, and that would cause people to have more spending power, and more spending power means more into Bitcoin and saving into Bitcoin. The the thing that if the Dems get in, they've definitely not shown any interest, apart from like the slight oh yeah, because it's getting so big now that they're kind of having to pander to it. But there's definitely more interest from Trump. Trump has always said, though, he only cares about the US dollar. He wants the US, and that's fair enough. He's part of the state, part of the government. He wants the government to make the US dollar powerful. Good on that's their shitcoin. They've got to do their thing. It's like expecting I don't know, Vitalik to get in power and only push for Bitcoin. No, he would push for Ethereum, right? So um while Vitalik would push a little bit for Bitcoin because it's sort of similar, they're all currencies and they all compete. And Bitcoin's going to focus more. Trump's going to focus more on the US dollar, and getting people to have more of it, and it having more of a say and in the global economy. So not losing the network effect. If they were smart, he would focus on the fact that the US dollar by default somehow grabbed the stablecoin market. Nobody talks about. We tried to launch a euro stablecoin, very, very difficult. No one wants it. All the volume's just crap in any other stablecoin apart from the US dollar stablecoin, and that network effect is really strong. And if they want to really cement themselves in that, they would focus on good regulation or helping US government, US companies deal with US stablecoins to make them really easy to use in terms of financial regulation. and taxation and stuff. So yeah, that's my take. It's a bit of a rant, but Trump's definitely more pro Bitcoin than the other side. When I say pro Bitcoin, I'm talking entire crypto market here.
Yeah, I just kind of agree with Aaron in the article here. I think that Trump's paying lip service to Bitcoin. If he's elected a second term, as he said at Bitcoin 2024, have fun with your crypto and Bitcoin and all the other things you play with. And I remember a few years ago, he said he's not a fan of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, which are not money and whose value is highly volatile and faced on thin air. As Aaron said, right now, Trump needs your money and your vote, but he won't need that anymore after he's elected. And as even Josh was saying, he would probably throw Bitcoin and crypto under the bus for the US dollar, which, according to, US theory and government and all that, they need it to be number one. It would be a disaster for United States power if the dollar was not number one. So it seems insane that a president would go for Bitcoin. As far as the polls and what's going to happen, I think that Kamala Harris is going to win in a landslide. I think she's going to take North Carolina, Georgia, Florida, Wisconsin, and Michigan, which is more than enough. I think the real problem is going to be in the streets afterwards when these people who don't accept the results of elections, the results of people voting, the reality that basically, if you just look at it strategically, conservative ideas are less popular than democratic ideas. There are simply less people. If you look at it strategically and you look what the conservatives do, they try to stop people from voting. This is because it's good for them if less people vote because they have less people. So I think this is going to be a big election. I think a lot of people
That's why they're
vote,
telling them all to get out
and
there and
I
vote.
think she's going to lose. I think, well, again, they have to tell their side to vote, and it's better for them if other people don't vote. And there's a lot more to this, but I just want to say basically, yeah, this is my view on this. But ugly old goat.
Just
let's
like
hear
when
your
you were
opinion.
saying that Biden was sharp as a tack, eh, Thomas? Yeah.
I was saying that Biden
You
would
kept
win
on
too.
repeating what the crap that the nonsense
No, I mean
mainstream tells
Biden's
you,
still
what
fine. Again,
CNBC, what
Trump
ABC, what
is now
CNN
muttering.
tells you. You
Trump
just
is muttering
rabbit
and
and
having
repeat the
disastrous
same
speeches
thing.
now. Trump's the oldest candidate now. Where's all your people now? What are they saying now? They got Biden out of the
It
race. They
doesn't.
didn't get Trump out
Age
of the
is
race.
not
It is
dementia.
the same thing. It's the
Dementia is
same.
dementia. And
Watch
when
his
there's an old
speeches.
candidate
Watch
that
any
is
of his
dement,
speeches. Just watch his speeches. I don't have to
All right,
quote
I
yeah,
them.
you're
watch them.
You're
I
talking
good,
love
over
dude.
them.
each
I
other.
watch
But
them
let's
over and
go
over. I go to sleep with them.
watch the
They're great.
recent
They're
ones,
so
Josh.
interesting and
You haven't
fascinating, and they're funny. They're great.
I don't think
He's
so.
gonna win.
He had one recently where his teleprompter stopped working, and he does 3 minutes on like, my teleprompter stopped working. I don't know what to say. What do I say when the teleprompter stopped working? He doesn't have anything. Like he was different before. You have to watch him now. But let's go to ugly old goat. What do you think
All right. Well,
about
you know
Trump?
what?
And then the other side, Democrats are engaging. I think crypto's for everybody. I think if it's just for one group, if you agree with that group or not, it's worse for everybody. But go ahead, ugly. What do you think?
Well, I never was a Trump fan until he became president. And then I became a huge Trump fan because, the way he handled himself and the way he handled the press and the way that he was his own man and he was not, he made a plethora of mistakes, but I really enjoyed the discourse and what was going on then. In fact, the he drove the left bananas like no one else ever has, and that was what I thought was just hilarious. And so I'm looking
Was
forward
good.
to that. Yeah, and I think that you know there's definitely politics is always a hot button, but this yeah, if I definitely agree that if he if Harris wins, wins like Biden won, yeah, there's going to be big problems in the United States that I don't know that we can recover from it. And the idea of having more people vote, well, that's the problem. One of the big problems that we have is that, that's why we have the immigration problem, because basically we're bringing people in and let them vote too. And the three greatest swindles of all time taught to me by my mentor, E.C. Harwood, is number one, inflation. Okay. Number two is entitlements. And the third one is regulation. and they're all done by government. And so you need, and it's not and this is what you're saying, and it's all coming to a head right now. The fact that you know, why do we want to regulate money? We want to not regulate money. We need to believe in the market. The marketplace is the solution. You know, look what was accomplished. You know, look what was accomplished in the markets by the innovation of things like BitMEX. We actually took futures and marketplaces to a new level, and it threatened the powers that be, and that's, of course, that's why I think we're gonna go into another topic here about money laundering. So let's go back into the three greatest frauds. It's not done in the private sector. They're all done in the government sector. And number one is inflation. Number two is entitlements. And number three is regulation. And you have all these things coming into this election. I mean, the reason that we have the immigration is because we want people to be part of this monster system. We want, and what, to me, what, now that we have this freedom, the next thing we need to do, there needs to be an international movement to stop any tax on labor. No man's labor should ever be taxed.
Yeah.
Period. And that's what we have. And all this came together. You know, the income tax, the Federal Reserve, and the entitlements all came. Entitlements came a little bit later. The big entitlements came, you know, during FDR. But and now, and that was mainly Social Security. But now there's no aspect in life where the United States government is not involved in some type of entitlements.
Well, just to play the devil's advocate, sir, sometimes there is a need for regulation. We've seen in the recent Hurricane Helene in North Carolina that building codes that were not up to standard are allowing houses to collapse. People are dying. And there's also this issue in a plastics factory in North Carolina where a lack of working codes forced people to stay at the factory where they drowned for their jobs. But let's keep moving. As Ugly said, we're moving on to issue 4. Binance founder Changpeng Zhao has been released from U.S. custody, according to Bloomberg News. Zhao spent 4 months in prison pleading guilty to violating U.S. laws against money laundering. They say there was more than 100,000 suspicious transactions with terrorist groups, including Hamas, Al-Qaeda, and the Islamic State. They also claim that Zhao's exchange supported the sale of child abuse materials and a large portion of ransomware proceeds. Let's go to Ugly Old Goat. What do you think about CZ being out of jail, punished only 4 months, considering the list of charges that I just read?
Well, there's a different set of justice for those who have extreme wealth or Bitcoin wealth and those that do not. So there's just, I think that is evident. That's evident in the way Arthur Hayes was treated. I mean, he basically, I've never seen anything like it where, you know, he was not considered a flight risk or a danger to the community, which is, those are the two things they give you when the feds lock you up. You have to have a bond hearing. And if you're determined to be either one of those, they keep you locked up. And he came, said, well, I'll show up in court, but you have to let me go back to Singapore and I'll meet you in Hawaii. I don't know exactly how he did it, but this is, this basically, this man had enough Bitcoin that he bribed his way out. It's like Arthur Hayes said, I'm in this Achilles because, you know, I can bribe him with coconuts. And in the United States, we're, you know, what is it, $5 billion fine that he had? Well, how much of that is going to, quote, where are the victims? You know, or who's who gets, we talked about FTX, and FTX has of these creditors that they've lost, I don't know, 80% of their assets. And yet, where is this victim assistance? If the government is going to find somebody like this, well, then let's distribute it to the people, because if where regulation failed is, if you think you need regulation, well, then, what happened during FTX? Basically, he was paying off the regulators. The regulators are always part of the industry. That's why it doesn't work. The CFTC is regulated by the clearing members of the Chicago Board of Trade in Chicago, Merck. The SEC by the investment houses. The banking regulations by the bankers. It's their way of solidifying their market, and it's their way of protecting their markets. So. And it's contrary to everything that Bitcoin's about. It's contrary to everything a free market's about. And so we have to peel these things off layer by layer. And the number one thing is something that's universally understood is no man's labor should be taxed. And what's happening now is people that are working are being taxed, and people that are not working are given a free lunch. And this is what happens when you tax labor.
It does seem like CZ got away with quite a lot here, only doing 4 months, paying a fine, which probably less than 10% of his worth, and probably got the company to pay for some of it. As Zuckerberg said, Josh, move fast and break things. Binance, practically a criminal operation, allegedly, moving from Malta when they tried to tax him there, moving from France, moving from this place, from that place, from everywhere. And then here it is. He's back out of prison. Everything is fine. Fine is paid. What do you think, Josh, about the CZ and Binance situation?
What a load of crap. That's what I reckon. I mean, the guy built a great exchange. It's never been hacked. He always, when it was hacked, he had the funds there. There was never anyone that really, suffered from financial losses using the exchange. When you have that much volume, it's almost impossible to check. I know that because I've known people that have worked there and such. There's plenty of times where they've put stops to things that they found, and it's very hard to find everything. Now, I'm sure that if you looked at banks in general, there is a certain percentage of slippage that gets through the cracks. Nothing is watertight. For instance, every single election has always got some slippage. There's always a percentage that's cheatable. And that's the same with banks, with who's allowed in and what's allowed to be done. Some of the banks actually allow it by turning a blind eye or whatever. And some of those transactions get in without them turning a blind eye. They're looking, but they can't see it because it gets hidden. Now, CZ's typical approach, just like anything that comes out of Silicon Valley, and you heard Eric Schmidt from Google talking about this, saying, look, typical Silicon Valley thing is you don't care about the legals, you go, and then hopefully you grow big enough to be able to fight the legal challenges later with money, because you become a unicorn, or you become so small and your startup dies that you don't have to deal with it, so your legal challenges never become an issue because no one cares, because you never made it. So and this is the approach that he took. While of course look, money is money. Wherever money is good money, there's going to be bad things that are done with it because it holds value. So you can do bad things with it just like you can do good things with it. Baddies wear shoes. It's just a thing that we all wear. It doesn't mean that shoes are bad. So we have to take a step back, and I just think it's criminal that the guy does even 4 months. Now, if he went through and stole everybody's Bitcoin and ran off, yeah, I would say catch the guy and put him behind bars, but he didn't. And so, I mean, that's just my take. What do you think, chat? What do you think?
I think the
What's the
CZ.
crime?
Go ahead.
Thomas, you mentioned they had a list of crimes. What crimes? I mean, I'm looking at money laundering. Is that a crime? We're making things that you're making crimes that are not crimes. You know, crimes. Exactly. I mean, he's run an excellent exchange. He's an innovator in every aspect of the marketplace, and he should be heralded and revered rather than reviled.
Well, it all comes back to market capitalism. The market is demanding certain things. Allegedly, the market seems to be demanding terrorism and child sexual abuse materials. Normally, we put controls on these. Binance, according to this article, allegedly had no controls. So that would be the crime. I do think there's a way of seeing this as a kind of a CZ hero story, where you say he's very much all or nothing. From the beginning, CZ collected Bitcoin at a very hardcore level. I don't think he ever spent. He worked big jobs. He got big money. He put the big money into Bitcoin. He takes this thing and, like you guys said, he makes his own bank. CZ made his own bank. He made his own exchange. Brian Armstrong did this with Coinbase with the regulations. CZ did it on its own. So it'll be interesting to see how that turns out. And I look forward to the movie. But from CZ to the man that CZ destroyed, SBF and FTX. As Ugly noted, FTX creditors are getting only 10 to 25% of their crypto back. Following the collapse of the FTX exchange, the FTT token collapsed by more than 80%, wiping away $2 billion in customer value. There's also an article from Business Insider where the judge says the public shouldn't be so mean to Caroline Ellison now that she's sentenced for 2 years behind bars. But remember, she was right there. Gary Fong was right there. Sam Bankman-Fried was right there. All the executives were there. They knew what they were doing. They were wasting people's money. They're losing people's life savings. And people are not going to forget about it. I disagree with the judge on this, but we'll see what the panel thinks. And finally, the SBF story just keeps getting stranger. P. Diddy is in jail, accused of a lot of things. We're hopefully not going to get into those things. But his roommate is Sam Bankman-Fried, and Sam Bankman-Fried has recommended his lawyer to P. Diddy, and P. Diddy has, according to this document, hired his lawyer. So Josh Shigala, we've got a lot of places to go. Caroline, don't feel bad for Caroline. Be nice to her. Feel bad for the people in FTX. They're only getting 25% back. Or this great wild card story here with P. Diddy and the lawyer. What do you think, Josh? Pick one of them or comment a little.
Look, the weird thing with human beings is that they will allow for they'll turn a blind eye to a whole bunch of crap, and then suddenly they'll get really upset. So, for instance, there might be a war zone and so many people are dying, and there's bombs coming out of drones killing reporters and all sorts of things, and people go, "Oh God, isn't that terrible?" Yeah. But when there's one video leaked of some guy chucking a puppy over the edge of a cliff at that war zone, then the hats come off. Then everyone's rah, and it drives people crazy, right? With Sam, it's the same thing. Everyone put their wrath behind Sam. I'm not saying he's not guilty, but everyone was like, "That's the guy." Yeah, this girl and this other guy. No, we have our fall guy. We have our thing that we're all going to get mad about, and that's him. It's crazy to me that you had this little pool of people that were obviously massively fraudulent, and all the fall went on to Sam. While I don't think he's not guilty, he's definitely guilty, but I think all of them are just as guilty as him. I mean, they all knew he was. It was a tiny little clique of people running this scam. And so I find it phenomenal that she gets 2 years and he gets triple life or something.
He got 25, but yeah, it's very bad.
He got 25. Okay, well, I think it's a strange justice to be sure. And maybe it's because she made deals, ratted him out. I don't know.
Actually, his sentence was very minor compared to what it should have been. I got
Right.
11 years for $1.5 million. So,
Jesus.
oh yeah,
And
there's a
SBF is
difference.
accused of wiping out billions of dollars of customer value. He's
Yeah,
accused
and
of taking the money directly
yeah,
in, using it for advertising, using it for buying food, buying expensive
right.
condos. They probably wasted 11 million, maybe in just food
And
alone. I'd have to look at the
what about all
information.
the endorsers and the people that who's the guy on
Tom Brady, Shaquille
Tom
O'Neal,
yeah,
anybody was
yeah,
advertising for
and then the guy
FTX.
that was paid 5 or 15 million, and why aren't they going after them? I mean,
Yeah.
this was all the politicians were involved in this, so if we're going to get nasty, let's get nasty. I mean, here's a classic system. uh how can you say that you need regulation when we have all the regulation is there,
It's there.
but
Yeah.
it's not enforced
Yep.
because the money's going to make sure it's not going to be enforced. The problem is you still have human corruption, and there's just no way that you can't regulate morality. That's always been the case, and you can't legislate morality. So it really has to come within a society, and what happens is morality is built from uh, uh, hardship, not from prosperity. You know,
Yeah.
the Jewish nation was built off of 400 years of slavery under Egypt, and there's just countless examples of that. The United States, had a plethora of problems, but it was the morality was ingrained in people's psychic and in their minds, and primarily because of Christianity. And I don't think there can be any question that's and we've lost that. So like I say, it's going to be very interesting times. We can take always take solace in the fact that it's going to get so bad that the Lord's going to come and solve the solution in His good time, because it's going to be even His own children are going to have a hard time enduring through I think what's ahead. I hope I'm wrong, but there's just the knowledge is increasing at such a fantastic rate now that what happens in a year or 2 years would take a decade before, and this is how fast we're moving, in this world. So it'll be interesting to see where it's going to be fascinating times.
It is.
And
It is
I'm
moving
glad I
fast.
won't be around to see.
Wow.
I hopefully things won't get really bad till I'm gone. You guys can deal with it.
I think it is exciting. It's nervous times, but it's also exciting times. I think we got to
Right.
see both sides of that. And with the SBF thing, let's remember what it was like when he was up. There was no end to this hubris. He was on the cover of Fortune magazine. They had a very strange article about them taking so-called smart drugs, uppers, basically, to trade more, to stay up later at night. There was the rumors of I think they called it a polycule. And then there was the Caroline Ellison classic video where she said that they did naked shorts and they didn't cover them. And everyone said, you're a hedge fund. You have to hedge. If the market goes up or down, you have to hedge. That's the whole point of the fund. Like, we're not, sure, a dummy like me is buying stocks. But if they're doing that with other people's money, hundreds of thousands, billions of dollars, it was just an amazing time. Josh, did you have more to add on the SBF when he was up? Oh, Josh is frozen. All right, let's keep. No,
I'm
now he's
back.
muted. Okay, Josh, more on SBF when he was up. Fortune magazine plastered across the city,
Yeah.
everywhere.
Oh yeah. I mean, everyone's culpable. really in the whole thing, running his scam. But you know, this is why I feel sorry for a lot of podcasters and stuff that got taken down with him. Like, you promoted his, um, you gave away referral codes, and it's like, well, how's anybody meant to know? Like, it. I stay away from that because it's really hard taking on promotions and promoting things in the crypto space because you never know. But man, scams are everywhere. Trying to deal with marketing. My God, the amount of scammers in marketing, it's unbelievable. These Telegram groups that say they'll do an AMA and it's all bots. They're these YouTubers that say they've got millions of people watching and they've got hardly any because, well, when you market with them, you don't get any uptick because you know that all their viewers are just bought and paid for. There's just so many pitfalls in this world, and it's getting worse with AI. You just don't know who's real and who's not anymore. So there's scams everywhere. Watch out, be careful, hold your own private keys, keep it simple, get to know your local farmer, and that's
Well,
my
and
advice.
speaking of marketing, like we've said before on the show, Josh, but it's still I always find it one of the most interesting things that people don't talk about this FTX thing is the main reason that I and a bunch of other, Bitcoin maximalist old timers even knew or even heard about FTX other than, sponsoring the Miami Arena, stuff like that, was they took over the Blockfolio app.
Oh, I
Blockfolio was
hated
this
that.
really simple app. You could track
I
how
loved it.
much your Bitcoin was worth. You could just type in numbers. You didn't have to connect it to an exchange or anything.
Yeah,
And I don't know who it was. Some marketing genius at his company said, "Buy this app, get
yeah.
their mailing list, their install base, essentially, and then they replaced that app in the App Store with the FTX app. So now all of a
Oh,
sudden your little price tracking app has an exchange built into it, an exchange I'd never heard of before, called
same.
FTX, that's all backed and is
Oh,
in
I didn't know
Fortune
that.
and all these things. What a genius marketing idea. Ugly, what do you think of that? Had you heard of the Blockfolio
No, I never
takeover?
heard of that. This is the first time I heard of that. Of course, I wasn't even familiar with that app. But I didn't know that. Yeah, I mean uh, and yet, you look side by side. The innovation is like Binance, like BitMEX, what they've developed. There's a similar history in free market banking. And a lot of people that, if you look at the history, they say, oh, it was wildcat banks and they all went broke. But if you do and I've done a study on that, very few of those banks went under. It's probably 1% or less. And the rare banknotes are from the sound banks because they were all redeemed. They didn't circulate. The ones that were kept were the ones that issued the specie, and then closed their doors, and so they held those dollars because there's basically any bank could issue dollars, which is just redeemable in a fixed amount of gold, and so those are collector's pieces, but the real rare collector pieces are from the banks that didn't go under because they were all redeemed, and it very few of the banks went under, and that's what one of the biggest misnomers is this idea of unsound wildcat banks. It was actually the gold standard that started in the early 19th century and developed really after the Civil War, and it evolved organically just like Bitcoin did, and it worked so well that they nationalized it and with the Federal Reserve. Which incidentally, I do think you were talking earlier. Uh, what's your first name?
Josh.
Josh. Oh, Josh. Okay, Josh. You were talking earlier about that, and uh, about how uh, the U.S. should digitalize the dollar. Although these USDTs are doing a fine job, the market met that demand.
Yeah.
And I didn't
Yeah.
realize it, but there's a whole world that's bigger than Bitcoin on the USDT market. That's what people are using and
Yeah.
trading. And you know
Totally.
what? Yes, and that is what way it should be, because gold, Bitcoin is the sound money. Bitcoin is the thing that you want to hoard. And the one thing I do think that in the next, if we're going to recover from this thing, I think that the United States government is going to go back to the gold standard, because they're going to be forced to do it. And I think it's the proper thing to be done, because it keeps, I would love, you have this two competing sound money standards. And one of them is rightfully for nations that have borders. Gold is a solid bar. It has borders. It's a real physical thing. Bitcoin is this, you know, ephemeral thing, this thing that's in the air, you know, but it has no borders, and that's, but people live in borders. People live in nations. Nations are ordained by God. You're not going to get rid of nations, all right? And it's a way to have freedom from tyranny. If you're, you know, you may not be able to get your physical body out, but you'll be able to get your wealth out. And the fact that you have your wealth in the ephemeral means that you can probably get your body out too. So this is, you know, and this is what I see is happening. I think you're going to see a huge flight from the United States. The immigrations are going to be in reverse. If the election goes the way that you think it is, Thomas, I think you're going to see a lot of exits in the United
A
States.
lot of money exit as well. People
yeah,
are just
people and money. It's
capital
going to be
flight's
gone.
going to be huge.
Yeah, it's going to be, and it's going to be gone in a hurry. So it may not be so much, you know, a violent situation. It'll be a violent situation, but it's not going to be from the conservatives.
Just the unrealized capital gains
huh?
tax threat is so massive for startups. Basically, you can't become a startup, because if the startup reaches $100 million worth, you have to sell, and you have to sell to some hedge fund or something. You cannot not sell because of your valuation, and because you owe the government suddenly all this money. So you'll never get a unicorn ever again, unless you leave the States, or don't start in the States to begin with. It's just a terrible policies, or it's nonsense.
I don't think that we'll see. I don't think we'll see taxes on unrealized gains. I just want to be
she's
clear on
threatening
that.
it.
Like, I think that, like many things, you threaten one thing to get something that's a lot softer than that. Personally, I disagree with taxing unrealized gains, and I don't think it'll happen. But it's a very interesting prediction, Ugly. If Ugly is correct and the United States goes back to the gold standard, you will have heard it right here first. So that would be an amazing turn and an interesting competition.
They're not going to want to, but I think they're going to be forced to. And
if Bitcoin is as strong as we think it is, that would be a fair response.
They have the reserve. They don't have the Bitcoin, but they have the gold. And you know what? So do the baby boomers. These baby boomers have their gold hoard. And once you restore that gold standard, there's no reason to hoard gold anymore, because you'll have it'll be like Bitcoin. It'll be a standard, a Bitcoin standard competing with the gold standard, which I think would just be great. I think they'll keep each other honest.
I think the gold would probably realize incredible gains, though, right? The baby boomers' last revenge.
I've already said I think Bitcoin. I think you're going to see gold in the next year and a half to 2 years hit close to $20,000.
Again, a major prediction. We'll see how it turns out. We've got a couple more issues really quickly. Let's go to our bonus issues. X, aka Twitter, is now worth less than 25% what Elon Musk paid for it. A complete disaster. As we talked about many times on this show, it was an advertising business. Elon Musk came in with a message of free speech. This destroyed the advertising business. It was easy to see in advance, whether you agree with it left wing or right wing. And we have one more story. Hell froze over in Texas. The state will connect to the U.S. energy grid for the first time by a federal grant. This will allow them to then trade energy with the wider U.S. market, should help them out. during crises. Josh Chagall, what do you think? Elon lost 75% of his value, or Texas has joined the grid. What do you think about that?
Um, Elon knew he overpaid. He tried to withdraw just before, but he was forced in by the contract to pay the 40 billion. It was never worth that in to begin with. I don't know why he paid that much. It was a bad deal. Um, I think X is
It could have
far
been
better
it could
now.
have been an incredible exit for Josh Dorsey and the other Twitter co-founders. Like you say, Josh, Twitter was never worth that on the stock market. It was never worth that on paper. He made an incredible offer. I think the board
It
felt,
was
even though they
just
weren't sure
nuts.
about what he wanted to do with Twitter, some of them anyway, they felt the offer was so great. As capitalists, they had to take it.
Couldn't refuse. Yeah, but I mean, me personally, as someone that has ideas that the wider society can't stand, um, I love the new X. I think it's far better than it was. I always felt like the threat of me losing my account. That's why I left Facebook. I've left YouTube now. I've unsubscribed from YouTube Premium. I'm on Rumble now because I just can't stand how these companies. I mean, my wife had an old video on YouTube. It was 12 years old about putting colloidal silver on your acne. She got an email saying, "We've taken down this video for medical disinformation." And you're like, "Wait, you guys are sick. You guys are sick and psycho. I'm gonna move." And this is exactly what like the fact that Twitter was in bed with the government, whether it's Biden or Trump or any of them, to basically censor people to have discourse and discussion about things is so demented. And I'm just so much happier with X now. It's so much more relaxing using it. If I want to say something that's my opinion, I can say it, and people can community note me. They can tweet me back and say that's dumb, or whatever, and we can discuss it out. That's how you deal with bad information. If you think it's bad information, give me better information, not this nonsense about, oh, you have to have some authority to take down. It's such a bad idea, because that's how you get tyrants. That's how you get mass deaths. That was the exceptionalism of the US. That was the exceptionalism of the West, was allowing for people to discuss ideas in an open market, no matter how dumb they are. That's why you had people even Jews standing up for Nazis being able to march in the US because it was free speech. Yeah, it's disgusting what they're doing and what they stand for, but you have to allow to be disgusted in a free market. If you don't wake up and aren't offended by something, you're living in a terrible country that doesn't allow offense. And it's important to be in a free country that allows you to feel offended every so often.
It is strange how different it is, though, to show up to a march personally with your face or wearing a mask, or to show up online wearing a mask, or to show up online as like 5,000 bots communicating different information. So I just think as a businessman, he lost 75%. It was really obvious it was an advertising based business. If you believe in free speech, that's fine. You have to know that part of that free speech is going to be hate speech or unlikable speech, which is going to be detrimental to your advertising business. Additionally, he destroyed the friendly bird logo, the words tweet, retweeted, Twitter, all
Yeah,
of
that
these
was
like
dumb.
kind of like
That
the
was dumb.
branding, the colors, like he made it black and white and X. And it was
Yeah.
just some very bad choices, whether you agree with him politically or not. Ugly
Yeah,
old goat,
I
what do you
agree
think
with
about?
that. I totally
Thank you,
agree with
Josh.
that.
Yeah, I
The
mean,
tweet,
and we're just
the
yeah,
bird.
both
Uh,
sides here.
yeah.
Terrible. But what do you think? Ugly
Well,
old goat, the Twitter issue. Go ahead.
yeah, I mean, Elon Musk, he maybe he's a defender to a degree of free speech, but he's certainly, a crony capitalist. His business models are, he's in bed with the government up to his eyeballs, and always has been. His whole business model is based on that. So, um, I uh, I like the old Twitter better, but uh, I never got that much into it where I was where I was saying anything that I thought I might get banned or anything. And then I've had personal circumstances where I just haven't been active on Twitter. It might be better now than it was. I don't know. I don't have an opinion there. It's just, all of these, they need to go after the people. It's like the guy at Binance, they need to go after the criminals that are using the platform,
Yeah.
and not criminalize the one who created the platform. Now, why someone like these Facebook and Twitter are exempt, but an exchange is not? It seems like the same principle should apply. And so if they're, I think, there should be free speech. And if somebody is violating that, by, by yelling fire in a theater, or through, indecent content, things like that. I know that's a moral judgment, but I think that's hasn't been that difficult. I mean, I remember before pornography, and pornography was very difficult to come by when I was a young man, and because it was simply, I mean, I remember there was a book, Tropic of Cancer, that was banned because it had the word fuck in it, and those, I mean, to a degree, we've undone those laws, but has it been to societal's good? Well, I think, a case can be made that we've, I have, I think we have a generation now that has been brought up with a lot of, very poor input, and it's reflected in our society now. I mean,
Yeah.
throughout. It's just, and it's gonna, the solution to that has always been severe hardship. All of a sudden, when you find out how hard it is to grow that bushel of wheat, or produce that pound of beef, it changes behavior. And so that's, I think we're
You don't
headed
think
to,
you don't think as much about how the boy is actually a girl, and how, all this nonsense. You're
all
thinking
this
about
nonsense
more
that's out here
primal
now
stuff.
yeah, exactly. There is nothing that's sacred anymore. That's the problem.
Do you think that's a morality issue though, rather than a free speech issue? So it was
Yes.
always, you were always free to say the word fuck. It was just the society didn't put up with it. You're like, hey, you're frowned upon by
Well,
all
and
of your network.
there's still consequences to speech. I mean, a lot of people are like free speech, but they really want speech without consequences. Like you can say any kind of hateful, horrible thing you want, but afterwards people might not want to shop at your business. They might not like your album or whatever your product is. Your speech was still free, but there were consequences.
Well, that's it, and that's the normal free market. So if there's some idiot that puts up no blacks on their shops, um, look, good on you, do whatever you want. I'm going to tell everyone never shop there because the guy's a bigot idiot. But he should be free to be a bigot idiot. Honestly, it's
It's
really
just I
important.
think it's a lot harder when you're dealing with bots and fake misinformation when there's 5 million fake accounts for every one real account.
But
It's a
where's the real
different
information?
calculation.
Who's
Well,
the
I think
arbiter of real information?
we're gonna need science fiction to get us there. I think we're gonna need
Yeah, I just saw
AI and
Yeah.
Elon
other
Musk
kind
the
of
other day.
monitor fees. So
I just saw Elon Musk on YouTube the other day, and he was offering me. He told me about how he interviewed President Trump, and I could send him my Bitcoin, and he'd send me back every Bitcoin I send. He'd send me back 2 Bitcoins.
Yeah.
If
So
it sounds too good to be true, you should probably invest right
now,
away.
how can that be? Why isn't YouTube? I mean, that's such an obvious scam. Why is not
Such an
YouTube being
so
prosecuted for
crazy.
this?
I know, and they've
And it
got
had to,
thousands of millions of views, those videos, and they pumped
Ah,
it.
there it is.
If you start a new YouTube account, it's the first thing you see is those sort of videos. It's amazing, and
I
they keep
remember
getting
what
away
I
with
was
it.
going to say. Ugly was talking about Craigslist and platforms. And originally there was this idea of the Craigslist defense that Craigslist was a neutral platform. People
yeah,
came there, they listed things, you bought services from those people. Craigslist was pretty much out of it. But as we saw with Ross Ulbricht, many people came to the Silk Road, listed products, other people purchased the products. I think Silk Road might have gotten a cut, which is maybe a difference to Craigslist. But suddenly that Craigslist defense, the Yahoo defense, the eBay defense, many horrible things, I'm sure, have been sold on eBay and Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace, even probably other places, but they're not punished the way that Ross was. So it is interesting to see that double standard and how that's applied on the internet. But I think we're running out of time, so we're going to go to prediction or story of the week. Josh Shigala, do you have a prediction or a story of the week? Go ahead.
Um, Prediction is well, no, just story of the week. We're just been busy working on the standard, basically, working hard on our version 4 of the smart vaults, um, taking wrap Bitcoin as well as Ethereum and a bunch of other tokens and be able to lock them up, and uh, and it automatically places that collateral into automated market makers on dexes, and earns the yield, and also goes and collects other incentives that are around the net for you without you giving up your private key. So you never have to. You've always got control of your tokens, and you can borrow against that value and mint a stable coin against that value, even though it's going off and working for you, and you can trade it as well, even though it's locked up. So it's very exciting. We haven't quite launched yet. We're looking at the 14th to launch. We're going through the last bit of the audit, but it's really exciting to be able to do that, because the last thing we want to do is have these centralized authorities where you have to send your Bitcoin or your Ethereum stuff to borrow against, or to earn a yield. We shouldn't have to, this the whole cypherpunk ethos is not your keys, not your crypto. So you have to sign a private key. When you create that, the smart contract makes it yours. It's yours. You have to sign the smart contract for you to do anything. So it's it's really fascinating. I love it. Come and follow what we're building at thestandard.io.
Very cool, Josh. Everybody should check that out. Ugly Old Goat, you've already made some impressive predictions today. Do you have another prediction or a story of the week? Go ahead.
no, no predictions. What I'll just I had some change in circumstances this last year. A year ago, last August, my wife decided she no longer wanted to be my wife, and she didn't want to be the mother of our daughter. So that kind of rock and rolled me, and I'm dealing with that. But I'm not blaming her. I blame myself, because I think I really failed her as a husband, and in a lot of ways as a father. But it's I think what I am doing is, of course, I am a believer in equity trading. I say trade your equity, don't trade the market. And now I've added to that accountability. And so for my what what I'm working on right now is to develop a 24/7 Bitcoin accountability group. And I don't know exactly where we're going to go with it, but it will be a live stream where we're live streaming 24/7. And I'm getting new ideas. I say, I'm going to plug your show in. So every Friday at 1, have a live stream, but you'll be on our live stream. So people can tune in. Hey, this is what's happening in Bitcoin. And but mainly what I'm building it for is other traders that need to be accountable, because most successful traders recognize that when they get backwards in the market, it's because they have not managed their money correctly. It's really not so much, because you're never going to be right predicting the market. But it's managing your funds and not getting that King Kong complex and have those huge equity swings, which is, why 90% of traders lose. And as a consistently successful trader, I've gone through the cycle many times. And I think one way to smooth it out, and I'm doing it, is I publish, my actual trading in Bitcoin. And I have set rules up for this. I'm actually going to have this I'm going to have my group hold me accountable, and hopefully they'll be doing the same. I'm not exactly sure where I'm going to go with this, but I'm kind of excited about it. It's a 24/7 live stream. So, and the idea I got was these kids do that with these games. But what's the biggest game in town? It's Bitcoin.
Well, that sounds great, Ugly, and people can check that out at uglyoldgoat.com. Keep up with your progress there.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ugly, and I'm sorry to hear about your marriage, mate.
I'm sorry, man.
Well,
it's unfortunate.
It's not over yet. We'll see what happens. I'm considering the blessing, and not. It's not easy, but that's where we're at right now, and hopefully, my goal is reconciliation, not divorce. But if I'm not going to stop a divorce if that's what's going to happen. So. But
I think you've got a good attitude there, and that you're taking stock of the situation, trying to make it better. I think that's the way to go.
All right.
So,
well, thanks for inviting me on, Thomas. I was really you look great, and just so you know, I'm going to be Santa Claus this year, so that's why I'm growing this beard, and I'm probably going to get my hair all white in November, and then I'm going to learn my Spanish by being Santa Claus to these to children down. My daughter has a little store down here in Mexico in a little shopping center, and I said, well, I'll be Santa Claus down there if they'll have me. So they're going to make a little space, and I'll be a little bit different, because I'm going to probably teach them what Christmas really is, and maybe teach these kids it's not just about Santa, but it's about what was done for us 2,000 years ago. I'm looking forward to it. I've never been Santa Claus, but I'm at the right age. I'm 75, and maybe I have 10 or 15 years of being a Santa Claus left in me.
Very nice. Actually, that's why I've got the mustache too. I have to. I'm teaching my daughter how to use the abacus to do maths.
Oh, really?
But she really wants Mario to teach her. From Mario Brothers. So, okay, and I woke up and I shaved and hey, it's me. Let's do the abacus.
How old is your daughter?
She's 5 now.
All right, well, all right.
Yeah.
Well, if she was here in Ensenada, Mexico, I'd be glad to be her Santa. I'll have to check out your website. You've said some interesting things, Josh, that you kind of have me interested. It sounds like you have a pretty good grasp of what sound money is. And that.
Thank you.
But we need, we don't just need sound money. We need sound money and free banking.
Yeah. Well, what's beautiful with the standard, because people lock up these rare assets like wrap Bitcoin, ETH, and Link, or whatever they feel is valuable.
Right.
It's the top tier ones. It's not like some weird coin down the end. It's just the top tier ones. I know that there's Bitcoin maxis out there who say only Bitcoin, but I can't build on Bitcoin. I had to build these on the Ethereum network. So you have to wrap your Bitcoin. But anyway, being able to, I love the idea of locking up these rare assets and issuing yourself a stable coin, which is backed by these, because you have to have 110% of those rare assets locked in the smart contract, and you can't get it out until you pay back the debt to yourself, and it's a 0% interest debt. And I love that idea, because now this stable coin is backed by the assets that you've locked into the smart contract. And the only person that can get it out is you, because you created that smart contract with your private.
Are you doing your own stable coins then? Are you?
Yeah, yeah, it's the own,
Really?
it's the standard. It's its own stable coin. It's coming out the other way. So there's no one lending, and that's why you can do 0% interest because there's no one lending. You're just borrowing from yourself. And so now, instead of a central government hoarding gold and issuing a coin against that gold, you've got thousands of people all around the world locking up assets in a decentralized network
Well, you
and
realize
issuing
that,
themselves stable
yeah,
coins.
where a lot of Bitcoiners have it wrong is money is not the most valuable commodity. It's the most tradable commodity. And
Yeah,
that's what it is. And the most tradable, and the US dollar is definitely the most tradable. And so
yeah.
it is still, and when I'm in Mexico, the peso is definitely the most tradable. So there's definitely a use case for Bitcoin, but it's not as money.
Mm.
It you know it has to be some kind of Bitcoin substitute, and there's no reason why you can't be on the Bitcoin standard. You know, when we were on the gold standard, very few people own gold.
Yeah,
They're
yeah. The
just
government
and
owned it all.
gold didn't even circulate because it wasn't convenient. But the
Mm.
standard was basically the gold substitutes, and it was that standard. It acted like a catalyst or a governor on the engine, and
But it could be fractionally reserved, and that's the problem. That whereas the smart contracts, it cannot be fractionally reserved. You mathematically always have to have a minimum of 110%, and it's a lot more than that because people don't want to borrow up to 110% because they could get
Are you
liquidated.
familiar with E.C. Harwood and his article, "The Lost Arts of Sound Commercial Banking"? Basically,
No,
I'm definitely for fractional reserves, but it has to be like commercial paper. In other words, there has to be other assets behind it. In other words, there is such a thing as non-inflationary money creation, and as long if I create money so you can, pay your employees and pay your suppliers while you're putting your cars or widgets on the market, that's self-liquidating commercial paper. And that paper, as people take that money and purchase other things, that money is withdrawn from circulation. That's why the old banks, the gold standard banks, their banknotes are rare because they didn't go broke. They were all redeemed. And that's why they are very rare commodities now. Are the banks that developed the gold standard? It was a marketplace and individual banks that built this gold standard system, and it worked so well that the government nationalized it and created the Federal Reserve. And it was a gold standard when they nationalized it. Of course, once they nationalize it, now they have a ticket to change it. But
the
anyway,
only problem I saw with the gold standard was that you're pegging gold to a dollar. So gold would never have its moonshot because it was always going to be a dollar. So that people stopped actually trying to find new gold in the ground. And so you had this bit of a squeeze where you're not finding new gold. It's going up in the secondary markets, but not really because it's pegged to the dollar. And
well,
so
it's not
that was
pegged.
one of the problems.
Actually, the dollar is defined as a certain amount of gold. So yeah, if there's a lot of new gold coming into the market, then the value of the dollar could go down, or it could, or yeah. So, but I don't see that as a problem, and there is an underlying. I mean, as Peter Schiff says, there's an underlying intrinsic. There's no such thing as intrinsic value, but there's an underlying industrial value for gold, which is fine. There's an underlying use case for Bitcoin too. It when gold was first discovered, it was just this shiny rock. And when Bitcoin, it was just, well, what is this Bitcoin? It wasn't even a shiny rock. It was just somebody's idea what money
A
should
rare
be.
number.
Yeah,
Well,
a rare
the
number.
gold market better watch out because pretty soon we'll get ourselves an asteroid full of gold, but we'll never find an asteroid full of Bitcoin. I'm sure you
There
guys
you
have already
go.
heard the Earth has a second moon right now. We've pulled in this comet that's been floating around, and right now it's within orbit with us, but pretty soon it'll leave. But if only it was full of gold and we could mine it all. But we're running out of time. Ugly, when you dress up as Santa Claus, you got to go back to the Mad Bitcoins archives and you got to do the poem Saint Satoshi's Day. It's the night
Oh,
before
okay.
Christmas, but I changed a couple of the words. So check
All
that
right.
out. That was
All
fun.
right, we
Uh,
will do that. Make that a date, and I'm going to be buying my outfit, and I guess I'll be the Bitcoin Santa Claus.
There you go. Bitcoin
And
Santa is what we all need.
yeah,
We
all right.
hopefully, if we're all good, the market will go up. Story of the week. I'm reading a new book. It's by Neil Stephenson. It's called Rem Day. It's a little old. I've actually heard that it's a prequel to one of my favorite Neil Stephenson books called Fall. If you guys are interested in good books, check those out. He, of course, wrote Snow Crash a long time ago, and he's written a lot of other books. So many, even that it's hard for me to keep up. But that's what I'm checking out. Um, I mentioned, Josh, we're getting the same thing they're doing to your wife's videos, they're doing to our videos. We are getting angry takedown notices for old Bitcoin group episodes. It's very unfortunate. Our goal is to have an uninterrupted archive here. And even if I do disagree with you guys politically sometimes, I let you have your say. I don't cut you off. And unfortunately, YouTube is punishing us for that. So I think it's the AI probably going back and reading everything with a very scanner darkly type vibe. But we'll
Yeah.
do our best to keep those online at the Internet Archive and other places like that. But if there's a gap in the archive, it's not an intentional gap. And I hope we have a backup copy. Usually we do. But everyone make more copies of your stuff. If you
Yeah.
do an interview, put the microphone out, your own microphone, and record it. A lot of times I've done great interviews and no one ever writes them up as articles. If I made my own copy, I could put it out there, and you just want to have backup copies. But
Yeah.
we're running out of time, so thanks to everybody for joining us. Give us a thumbs up down below, push subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks to everybody in the chat. Give us a wave if you made it this far. And
Thank you, Thomas. It was
Yeah.
great coming on here. Glad to see you're doing so well, and I have the utmost respect for you. You were the one that I my very first person that I watched when I was introduced to Bitcoin, and then you introduced to me to so many other people, and I'll always be grateful for that.
Yeah.
aw, thanks. Well, thanks, Ugly, for being a guest on the show and for being so kind there. And to everybody else, until next time, bye
Bye
bye.
Bye.
bye.